entrepreneurs need to understand if they're looking for the easy way out in that 24-month period or that 3-year period, they will fail.
Mhm.
Because it's, as you pointed out earlier, you might have immediate success, but at that 24-month period, you can't sustain it because you can't be lucky forever. You have to be good.
Welcome to the Break Free, the best business podcast on the internet. I am your host, David Mancilla. Today we have with us Tony Rose, a very good friend of mine and an incredible entrepreneur that he has defied the odds many times, and now he has a very successful company. Tony, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me. I'm grateful that you are doing that.
Wonderful. Tony, for the audience, can you tell me your full name, where do you live, and what do you do for a living?
I am Tony A. Rose. I am a certified public accountant. I live in Los Angeles, split my time between Los Angeles and Nevada in Las Vegas. And I am the founder and visionary for a 60-person general accounting firm.
That's beautiful. How long have you been in business for?
40, going on 47 years, actually.
Yeah, it's impressive. Impressive, Tony. You know that most businesses go out of business within 2 years. Right?
We know that.
and companies that make it to 10 years, I think it's less than 2%. And you are more than 40 years. Incredible. So this is what this podcast is about. I'm going to get all the genius out of you, if you will, so that we can help other entrepreneurs achieve the kind of success that you had, which is impressive. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before we start digging deep, tell me, did you ever have a job in your life?
Yeah, I did. While I was in college, I sold shoes. And I actually started out as a janitor at a shoe store, and they promoted me to selling shoes, which certainly helped me understand how to deal with customers. Then out of accounting school, I went to work for a larger accounting firm, and I was really awful, just awful. And after 7 months, they fired me.
Right.
I was newly married, had no money, called one of my accounting professors and said, I'm out of a job. Do you know anyone that might need me? And he made a couple of phone calls. And in my book, which is called Go Beyond Numbers, I talk about the fact that this professor had no obligation to do anything for me whatsoever, but he did. And he picked up a telephone and he called someone, and it was a tax firm. So I went the next day and had an interview, and they hired me, and I became a tax person. And that I was there for about 4 years. And then in 1976, my partner and I started our own accounting firm.
Now that's a beautiful story. So basically you started as a janitor in your career, and now you're a successful entrepreneur, and it takes a lot of failures to get there, isn't it? What did you change between your first job where they fire you and to be successful in a 4-year employment situation with the next employer?
You know, it's really funny. I've thought a lot about this, David. I didn't do a lot of thinking. I think that I really found my passion and my niche in dealing with the tax problems of my clients. And I found that I had a natural aptitude for it. I just get it. And I'm not the kind of accountant that can quote all the laws and all the regulations and all the revenue rulings and all the things. I have a general sense of how the tax law works. And then I go back to my research to support it. So I loved it. I also love dealing with people. And my outlet for dealing with people is having clients. So I actually ended up having a natural progression into starting my own firm. It was very important that I had a mentor who became my partner. Her name was Mary Snyder. And she was one of the earliest female CPAs in the country, I think. And we had a really wonderful partnership until she retired about 10 years into the firm's origins. I don't know whether I'm an entrepreneur or a good business owner. We have probably 600 clients here or more, and we have many entrepreneurs. And I've come to the thought, David, that maybe not all business owners are entrepreneurs, and not all entrepreneurs are great business owners. But I think that there's one thing in common between great entrepreneurs and great business owners. And that one thing has to do with the fact that they have no choice but to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, wouldn't you agree that?
100%. When you don't know where your next paycheck is coming from, you better do something about it. And that's how we live our life. I've been in business for 17 years, and that's still how I live my life. We run cash flow reviews every month, and we run on EOS, and every quarter we set goals. And I know I can predict at least 6 months from now where I'm going to be based on the sales pipeline that I have. But my only level of certainty is the sales pipeline, but that's not guaranteed. That's just the possible clients that I may have.
You know, for me, and early on, and I still do this today, so this is 47 years later, I would come in every morning and I would check the mail, and I would check the mail for the checks. Right. We prided ourselves in never missing a payroll. Now, we didn't get paid. The first year I was in business, I made $500. Wow. The second year I was in business, I made $4,500. And we were a very, very sleepy accounting firm up until the early 1990s. And the successor to Mary was her stepson, Greg. And Greg and I had a lot of fun practicing, and we just had a ball, but we weren't very good business people. And then a man by the name of Jacobs joined us, and we put him on an eat what you kill kind of compensation structure. And he actually became our equal partner. And from that time in the early 1990s, we sort of exploded and started actually making some real money. But up until then, we were having probably more fun than making money. Mm-hmm. But every morning, David, I would check the mail to see what kind of cash would come in. Right. The other thing that happens to me, David, is that I kind of have, and I know this is really foolish, I sort of have the attitude that on January 1st, I have nothing. And the year develops from that point forward. Now we are maybe going to do 14 million bucks this year. So that's not a huge accounting firm, but it's nice size. And I know intellectually that I'm not going to have nothing beginning January 1st. We know that within a tolerance range, what our gross revenue is likely to be in the coming year. But I always run fast beginning January because I believe I have nothing and I start from zero.
Yeah. And that's and having that mentality is what makes you successful. I have met many, entrepreneurs and business owners that they go bankrupt because they don't have what it takes, and that's what it takes. They probably close a big contract. They have all this cash flow in. They start spending the money foolishly without knowing that as you have high seasons, you also have low seasons.
Oh,
right?
And we do. And you know one of the things that happens with entrepreneurs that are successful is I think they work really hard to make things look easy, or people looking from the outside watch what you do and they think it's easy. And the reality with entrepreneurs is that what they do is really very hard, and it's hard mentally. I think it takes a lot of emotional effort, sometimes a lot of physical effort. It takes a lot of courage or foolishness. But I know I try to make this look easy for my kids, and it's not. And entrepreneurs need to understand, if they're looking for the easy way out in that 24-month period or that 3-year period, they will fail. Because it's, as you pointed out earlier, you might have immediate success, but at that 24-month period, you can't sustain it, because you can't be lucky forever. You have to be good.
And another thing that for me is incredible is the responsibility to have somebody on payroll. I remember when I started by myself. Within 2 months, I had 3 employees. And well, the nature of my business, I run a software consulting firm. I needed to have developers to help me write the code for my clients. But it was okay when I was by myself for a couple of months. I was like, okay, no problem. If I don't have enough more work, I can go without working for a while. But now I took somebody out of a stable job to convince them to come work for me. Now it's my responsibility to provide for them, and they shouldn't be worrying about where the next paycheck is coming from. That's my responsibility. And that's what I signed up when I decided to start a business. So there is a big difference for me between a self-employed person and a real business owner. And the difference is, do you have a team? And does the team can rely on you for their sustainability? Right.
Well, and I subscribe to that. Who was it, Michael Gerber, that wrote the famous book, The E-Myth? And I don't know whether you've read that. And it is absolutely true. When you are self-employed, more often than not, what you've got is a job.
Yep.
Now, it doesn't have to be that way. And a self-employed can be very entrepreneurial, and they can be solo, I think, and maybe consider themselves an entrepreneur. But more likely than not, when you try to scale yourself, you need others, and you need to be able to lead. And one of the demarcations between entrepreneurship, in my opinion, and business ownership is that entrepreneurs often make crazy with their employees. And oftentimes entrepreneurs do not hire people to be a bridge between them and their other employees, because oftentimes entrepreneurs don't play well with others. Now, my feeling is, and just from observing you, and we don't know each other all that well, but we know each other, I think you probably do play well with others, but many entrepreneurs don't.
Right.
So you hire someone and you say, look, you got to get me organized. So you hire someone with that characteristic to get me organized, and they go into your office and they help straighten things up and they create process for you. And then the first one to violate the process is you.
Yeah.
Right. And now you've got someone who's actually very qualified, who's willing to be dedicated to you, and you're screwing with their head.
Yeah.
Because you hired them to do something, and then you are not letting them do it.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes what you need to be as an entrepreneur is sometimes to have a middleman that can deal with your craziness, but then also transmit your values and vision to a team of people to get things done for you without you subjecting yourself to that other team. And I know that sounds crazy.
But actually, even if you are relatable to people, you still need that position. If you are to be the business owner and be on the business, not in the business, you still need that person. The thing, though, is that that person comes usually with a high-paying salary expectations, and you have to grow big enough to do that unless you bring them as a partner. Because otherwise, it could also bankrupt you, right? And I tell you this because it took me forever to start growing because I didn't want to give up that control. I always wanted to still micromanage and make sure everybody knew what they were doing and being on top of everything until I started growing and started growing myself, going into coaching groups, business coaching groups until I realized that I needed help.
You and I heard a presentation by Nick Peterson last weekend, I think. I don't know if you were around that conference for his presentation, and he wrote a book called Bumpers.
Yeah,
and it's a very thin book, very easy to read, and he talks about the concept of having non-negotiables. And I do think it's really important for an entrepreneur to get in touch for them in the environment they're working in and the business that they have, what their non-negotiables are. Now, I think there can only be 2 or 3. You can't have 10 non-negotiables. That just doesn't work. But having an understanding with your employees about what your non-negotiables are. It might be, you know what, don't bother me after 5 o'clock because I'm going home to my family.
Right.
It could be, don't ever come to me with a problem without a suggestion about how to solve it. Anything like that. And I really do like the concept of non-negotiables. I think creating those bumpers, he calls his book Bumpers, what keeps you down the path that you want to go is being able to say no as an entrepreneur to initiatives or behaviors that are non-negotiable for you. And I just love that idea. I'm not sure how I'm going to implement it, but I'm going to try to work on what my non-negotiables are, even 47 years into my business.
I think those bumpers evolve too, Tony, right? Like you may have different bumpers depending on your growth in your professional career as an entrepreneur.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. They're very dynamic.
Like I remember before, I allowed people to have access to me all the time until I had a heart attack. I had a heart attack in 2011.
You did?
Yeah, I was working 16 hours a day. I was traveling way too much. I grew the company from 7 people to 120 people in 2 years. And then I collapsed. I had a partner in Atlanta, and I ended up giving the whole company to him. And I was left with five guys and myself because I needed to heal. But I did that to myself because I had no bumpers. I wanted to have success so badly that I sacrificed my health and my family in order to achieve that. And at the end of the day, I was broke. I had no company and I had no health.
And otherwise you were perfect.
Yeah, so for me, bumpers are very important. But my bumpers from back then, I remember saying, you know what, now I'm going to change my life. The first thing I did is I joined a leadership course for technical people. You see, I was brought up as a software engineer that became an architect, that became a leader in software departments on large multinationals. And then I opened my own business. But I had no idea how to run business. I was gifted because my grandfather was a chartered accountant, and he told me, take as many accounting courses as possible, even though you're doing computer science in school. So I took 7 accounting courses. And that's what actually helped me not go out of business.
That's what helped you not go out of business. That's great.
Yeah, because
that's great.
I actually knew how to read a balance sheet, what it meant, you know. So
and you know what the funny thing is that I really encourage anyone who's an entrepreneur to explore learning things that are not in their passion, just to be exposed to different ideas. Successful entrepreneurs gather around them people that subscribe to their vision, but they also can be can present no views different than what the entrepreneur's view is. So you never hear any different positions or different thoughts or different disciplines, because it's very comforting to have a lot of people around you that are saying yes to you all the time. And I certainly do nothing to discourage people from saying yes to me. I love when people say yes. But I think it's also important to hear other voices, other positions, other approaches. And I think it's also important for any entrepreneurs in their industry to not believe that they always know what's going on in their industry, and seek to understand what changes, what the dynamics are, what the economy does, what the geographical area is in which you're operating, especially with businesses that are international, and understanding what influences there are. So the fact that you're a great software engineer, you only keep sharp if in your area you're looking for what are the changes in software engineering. But also you want to have that tempered with what's going on in the world with your potential clients. And I know you do this, David, to understand the context, the gaps that your clients have, so you can fill those gaps.
Definitely. No, it's so important. And once you start growing your business, Tony, everything becomes about culture, isn't it? It took me forever to understand, actually, the heart attack, the angina that I had was merely because I didn't hire people for their values or for their attitude. I hired them for the technical skills only. So I hire horrible people, and I was a horrible person too. So you usually tend to attract what you are. And then after that, after the 2013, I did a postgraduate degree in leadership. It was all about culture. How are you becoming a leader that inspires others to do what they need to do without you having to breathe behind their back? And so I invested from 2013 to 2017 most of my time on how to build my team with good values, with a real culture, not something that is on a wall that nobody reads, but something that it's lived every day. So my retention went from 25%, to down to 5%. Nobody was leaving the company because they enjoyed it. And it's not that I pay the best in the industry. I have so much competition, right? But it's all that. And I realized after learning all this, and I'm still learning, but now I'm finally on the business. I'm not in the business anymore, and it's lovely. It's lovely because I can see how people progress, how they grow. I allow them to make mistakes. And I think I'm set for the future as long as I keep doing this pattern, as long as the industry, the marketplace allows me to grow. Right?
I maybe it was Vern Harnish. I heard someone say very recently that you hire for values and you fire for values.
Yeah.
And that the expertise and the skill set can be taught to those people that share the same values that you have. So the question is, what are the values that are most important to you as an entrepreneur, and in your team, what values do you most cherish? And we have 6 core values that we talk to our folks about. You've really managed to create a great company through hybrid work and remote working. Yeah. And I'm telling you, I admire you so much for that.
Thank you.
The problem that we're struggling with now is up until January of 2020, we were virtually 100% in office. Now we find ourselves with our team spread all across the country and actually the world. We have one employee that's has lived in Georgia in Central Europe. We have employees in 7 or 8 different states now. And we do have a core kind of mothership in Los Angeles, but I think the majority of our employees now are across the country and across the world. And how do you develop culture with that kind of environment? And I don't know that we've cracked the code, but we're working on it because we have no choice.
Yeah, it's the world is evolving and we have to evolve with it, right? Also, like employee retention is horrible, right? People don't want to work and they leave. Like I don't know if you've seen lately. I remember last year, I was taking a flight to Miami and I wanted to buy a coffee. It was 8 a.m. I went to the Starbucks at the airport. There was a lineup, a 2-block lineup. When I finally got to get my coffee, there was one lady working, and I asked her what happened, and she's like, "Nobody wants to work. Nobody wants to work."
and I really don't know what that's about. And I'm going to resist blaming employees, and I'm going to blame that we haven't made the case that working for us will stimulate them, be consistent with their values, and be a place that they can be on a mission and a passion.
Yeah.
I'm increasingly wondering whether those of our employees that don't share our values should be invited off the ship. And if we end up not being able to take care of $14 million worth of business with the employee group that wants to be here and march in the same direction as we march, then maybe we need to let those clients that maybe don't share our values either go and have a smaller firm, but have a group of people that are kind of marching in the same direction, wanting to make an impact on the clients' lives.
Yes.
Believe me, I love making money. Making money is one of my favorite things to do. But if you ask me what my purpose in life is, and my purpose in life is not to make money. My purpose in life is to make an impact on my clients. And I want them to say, after they have a conversation with me and they terminate that conversation, "Oh my Lord, I won't operate without this guy because he gets me and he loves me and he understands me and he wants me to be successful." And that's what really rocks my world. And if I wasn't doing that, if I didn't think I could make that kind of impact, I would pack it in because I don't have to work. But I love working as long as I can communicate to people my passion to help them have a more secure life, have a better life. And I want the people that work for me to understand they're not preparing a tax return or a financial statement. They're impacting those people that we're doing it for, their life. And when you think about that, you could minimize what it is to be an accountant. But if you think about you're in the business of changing people's lives, boy, that's a very worthy thing to do.
And you touch a great point, and that's why you are so successful. When companies, and that happens to me, right? It happened to me in 2011. That's why I got sick. When your whole purpose in life is to make more money, eventually something's going to break. Because I truly believe money is a consequence of adding value to somebody else's life. And that's when I go into a project, when I go into a client, I say no to 90% of my leads because they are not qualified to make money with the software they want to create. So why would I tell them to invest in something that is not going to add value to their life? And as a result, I have great reputation and the money comes in. But when I stopped looking after the money, and this was 2013, Tony. In 2013, I said, I'm set. God has been amazing with me. I'm going to keep doing this because I believe I can add value to people's lives, not only my clients, but also my employees. I believe I can create an environment where everybody wins. So that when you have that mentality, of course you want to get up in the morning. I tell my people, when we're in trouble, I tell my people, tell me a reason why I need to get out of bed today and work. Because I no longer need money.
You know,
right?
I want to tell you, let me tell you a quick story. I know a young man who's learning how to be an investment advisor. And he was working with someone who was to be his mentor and had a meeting with a prospective client. And that prospective client asked a question about how to handle their retirement funds. And the mentor, who was trying to be an example for this young man as he was training to be an investment advisor, went ahead to that particular prospective client and said, well, you know, your retirement plans are this, but if you let us invest all your other funds and we could do all this stuff and we'll get you superior returns. And it was just so transparent that this person was not interested in answering the question, filling the gap that the prospective client thought they had, but was just trying to get revenues, trying to be a salesperson. And as I listened to the story, it actually made me really angry because here's this young man was trying to be trained on how to be a great advisor. And all the mentor was trying to do was explain to this young trainee how to try to make more sales. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't believe that mentor had any characteristics of an entrepreneur, because entrepreneurs believe they have a gift to give to the world and that their obligation is to give that gift to the world. And with that should come money, but the object is to make an impact, is to give those gifts. And I hope those that might be listening or watching this understand that if you want to be an entrepreneur and you're in it for making money, go get a job.
Yep.
Go get a job. Because it never happens that way. At least for long. You get found out. When all you're in it is for you, when you're a narcissist, you might get away with it for a while, but eventually it just unwinds. Mm-hmm. Don't you find that to be the case with your clients?
Oh, yeah. No, and you know, it's funny. Even if you happen to succeed, I had a client that was a narcissist for sure. And he was running $100 million company. But you know, I worked for him for 1.5 years, and then I had to fire the account because I just couldn't take it anymore. The operation was so hard, and you know, he was actually being abusive to my employees. And that's one thing that I will never tolerate. But then if you look at his life, he was able to save his business and he made a lot of money, but I never saw him for a day as a happy person. So I could see his suffering. So even if you happen to stay in business, your life is going to be miserable. Right?
Well, and no one wants to help you. Invariably, there will be times when you as an entrepreneur have problems. And it is when those problems happen, one of two things will occur. The first thing is that if you're really bringing value to the world, no one is going to want to see you fail, and they will rally around you and help you as much as they can. Mm-hmm. Or if you are a user, if you are a taker and you have problems, everyone will stand by and let you bleed out on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Because no one wants you to win, and they will believe that you deserve what you get.
And nobody likes a dictator. And a narcissist, right?
Well, you know, and I think I'm a narcissist too, but maybe I'll call myself a social narcissist. I am I certainly find myself self-absorbed, but I try to be benevolently self-absorbed.
Yeah,
Raging narcissists, they'll never get away with it forever. And you're right, there's some people that might be successful for 20 years and make a lot of money and make a lot of people around them miserable. In the end, they are really, really unhappy. They're toxic, and they are rotten from the inside out.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's just a matter of choice and learning and growing yourself. You know, talking about narcissism, I didn't even know what that word meant 2 years ago. And as I'm growing, you know, through our networks, I was looking around like, maybe I'm one of those dudes. But just being aware allows you to know, like, it's hard when you're a business leader, and if you're the visionary like you and I are, we're always setting the vision, and people look up to us, right? So as long as you're aware that you have this tendency, you can actually control it, right? So now on purpose, I try to make sure my picture is nowhere in the office. Like, I take down any awards that are personal. Like, I'm trying to change it, to change the perspective, because there's nothing worse than just, you know, glorifying yourself on making yourself a god to others, right?
Well, and you know, Rod, ultimately, it's about creating a legacy. One great thing about entrepreneurship, an entrepreneurship that lasts, is that is there a life in your business beyond you?
Mm-hmm.
And are you creating a product that is sustainable without you? And certainly in accounting firms like mine, that is always a question. And I know one of the challenges that we'll be working on over the next 5 years is creating, I think we have an ethos for the way we deliver services and what we think and the way we treat employees and the way we treat our clients. And I think that those people in leadership here subscribe to this. And the transition for us over the next 5 years is to have the business untethered to me or the remaining named partner, Jake Jacobs. We unfortunately lost our partner, Greg, several years ago to cancer, but the three of us operated terrifically together, and what we want that feeling to be there 5 years from now, even if we're not, and that's really the goal. Now, I want to work for another 25 years. There's no, in fact, I have told friends of mine that I am 73, but I see no reason why I can't live another 50 years.
You're 73?
Yeah.
I thought you were in your late 50s, early 60s.
Well, 73 is the new late 50s.
Wow.
and I'm going and I want to work for, I want to exist on this planet for at least another 50 years. I hope in 50 years I'll get it right. But I want this place to not need me, and I know that's what you're doing with your business, and that's really important. That's really important.
It's a long process, but you know, when I realized that the only way to run a business is to be able to sell it at any time, otherwise it's not really a sustainable business. I put all my efforts on that. How can I make this company that if anybody wants to come buy it, it can be sold because they don't depend on me? It's an entity on its own, and I'm not there yet. I'm working towards that, but it's a worthy ideal. You know what I do now more, Tony? Like I instead of working 40 hours a week, now I start my day at noon, I finish at 5, and I don't work on Fridays. I've been doing that since December 2019. Sometimes I have to do more work, but I do that on purpose so that I'm letting the company start to run without me less and less and less. Of course, I'm always here for emergencies. I'm always here for anything they want me, but this free time also allows me to grow myself, to do things like this podcast, where is my giving back to the world, right?
Well, and you know what? You've created your bumpers.
Yeah, those are bumpers for sure. Yeah.
And I am in the process of figuring out my bumpers as well.
Beautiful.
Because you're right, you cannot sustain working 12, 15, 20 hours a day. And there comes a time when it's counterproductive, where you're not giving the best you can give.
Yeah.
All you're doing is just trudging through mud.
Yeah. And you when you lower your time, you really have to prioritize. So what that happens, so I have ADHD. So it's, for me, it's actually fabulous because I narrow my window so that I can only focus on the most important things that need my focus. So automatically all the fat, if you will, goes away. And it works. It's amazing, but it works. I'm more productive now with this schedule than I was when I was working 10, 12 hours a day.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Tony, I want to respect your time. I have one more question for you before we go. Thank you, by the way, for opening up your heart to the audience. You are a brilliant entrepreneur, and for sure, many people will get blessed by listening to this podcast. One last question.
Sure.
If you had access to a billboard on a very busy highway, what would you write in it?
If I have access, say that again, David.
If you had access to a big billboard that is crossed, in front of a very busy highway, so a lot of people will be able to read it, what would you write in that billboard?
God, I'm going to tell you what popped into my mind. And maybe this is so off the wall, off the billboard. The billboard would be "Shit happens."
Wow.
And when you're an entrepreneur, David, shit happens. And do you let it throw you off, or do you understand, deal with it, and move on?
It's beautiful. It reminds me of the quotes from Michael Jordan. He says, I had failed so many times and I got back up, and that's why I succeeded.
That's
so
exactly
it's
right.
Failures that we succeed, because shit happens. Sometimes you fail and it's not even your fault. Like a recession, for example.
Yeah, that's what I want on my epitaph. Shit happens.
I love it. Beautiful. Tony,
Well,
thank you so much for your time, brother.
Thank you for having me, David. This is really fun. As you can tell, I love talking about this stuff. And I want to show you. Have you seen my book, Go Beyond Numbers?
No, I haven't seen it. Congratulations. It looks beautiful.
And what I do is I talk about the five things that every business and every person owns. And one of those is money, but there's 4 other things. And those 4 other things, if you manage them well and you respond to them well, money just comes. Money just comes.
It's beautiful. Tony, if people want to find you online, if they want to become your client, which I highly advise, where can they find you?
They can find me at rsjcpa.com. And I think we have a website called Go Beyond Numbers.
For your book.
I think it's gobeyondnumbers.com, where my writings and my podcasts are as well. And I talk about a lot of stuff, not just accounting. In fact, accounting is the last thing I talk about. Right. And I think people can think about what a good accounting advisor ought to be advising them about. And I think a lot of people have gone to it and found useful, actionable things that they can do. Beautiful.
Tony, thank you once more. You're always welcome to come back. I think we have so much more to talk about. So let's do this one more time.
Yeah, we'll do it again. Thank you, David.
Thank you, brother. Blessings. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Blessings to you.
Cheers.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free Podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.